Hello, Biz Coach Show community. We are hanging out today with Eric T. Whitmoyer, CEO and founder of My Biz Coaches. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, David, and yourself?
I'm doing awesome for two reasons. One, we have an amazing show as always, which, by the way, if you don't already subscribe, be sure to do so. You don't want to miss future episodes. But I'm also excited because you have a bit of an announcement that you've been working up to, teasing a little bit over the last couple of weeks. And I'm excited to finally hear about something new that you've got cooking. So why don't you share it with our audience, man?
Awesome. I appreciate that. So let me introduce it this way. We have been developing, and I've mentioned it many times on the show before, but we've been developing a number of what I would call partnerships with other companies that have solutions or services that would be valuable to our business owners and to our coaches, for that matter, that our coaches then can extend to their clients, their client base. And some of them may take advantage of it for themselves as well. So we have a number of different partnerships we'll be announcing throughout the summer. And the goal is to make all the announcements, get everything in place, and have everything go live, likely the beginning of August. So it'll kick off my my inaugural birthday, or my inaugural birthday, my 55th birthday. The point is that we're trying to get everything in place for the back half of the year, the fourth quarter push, and a lot of these announcements are going to be phenomenal partnerships that we're looking forward to introducing to our client base, to our coach base, and ideally, I think what we'll find is it'll be an excellent extension of the services that we already provide. So in this particular case, when we're going to make our first announcement on. I recently took a role with a company called Jay Galt. And Jay Galt works with business owners in helping them identify and develop their corporate credit, which would be their EIN enabled business credit, right? We refer, there's actually business credit and there's corporate credit, which we'll get into a little bit more today. But the really helping people identify their corporate credit, and more importantly, how to bolster that up and get the most value out of that so they can leverage that within their business. So, I took a role as a managing general partner with Jay Galt as of the beginning of May, actually, technically. I've been doing a series of trainings and getting everything in place, and we're now rolling it out and introducing it to the coaches. We need to make sure that everybody understood what we were doing. And now we're officially rolling it out. We'll have some information to share with you in about 2 weeks where you can go live and see the information. And we'll be providing a series of trainings, free trainings that will help people understand the value of business credit.
Well, it's awesome, man. Really exciting partnership. And, certainly as a coach, I'm sure you've come across your fair share of clients that have struggled to get the capital they need or secure, this loan, right? Those sorts of things. So I think that'll be an awesome partnership, not only from an education perspective, but also kind of some tangible capital benefits, which is awesome. And that's really what we're talking about today, right? There's a lot of myths about building business credit. And this is kind of a great intro into future topics and some of those free trainings and workshops that you talked about. So why don't we start with kind of the first myth that you hear or see as you're working with clients when it comes to building business credit?
Yeah. So the biggest myth, quite honestly, if I could call it a myth, is the fact that corporate credit is the same as personal credit. And nothing could be further from the truth. There is a very distinct, meaning how it operates and what it does. So if you think about it, as an organization, as a business, you establish an LLC or a corporation, some other legal entity that then owns or controls your business. And that's important to identify and understand, because basically what you do when you create that other entity through ownership of as an individual or a group of individuals, that entity is in the eyes of the law, is its own standalone person, for lack of a better term. It's an entity, right? And so that business entity that's created can have its own credit account. And so that, first and foremost, people need to understand that entity can have its own credit account. Now, many times what happens in the beginning when we first get started into business, we don't have if we have an EIN number, which is one of the things that you absolutely have to have. By the way, there's a list of 7 key things. Within a week or two, we'll make this available, and it'll be free information on the website. You'll be able to go and check it out, and you can see for yourself some of those things that you need to do. And these are like straight up no-goes as it relates to business credit. If you don't do these things correctly and don't have these things in place, you will get denied at your bank for any kind of credit, let alone a line of credit or anything like that. So the biggest mistake in understanding is that separate entity can have its own credit account or reference to credit, and then the extension of that is that corporate credit is the same as personal credit, and that's not anywhere close to the truth either. So I think that for people who don't know, that's the biggest opportunity, quite honestly. They have a tendency to assume, okay, well, this is how, and there's been a lot of discussion in the last couple of years about your FICO score, what makes up your FICO score, what information is allowed to go into that, what impacts it, how does it impact it? If you look at some of those companies like Credit Karma and Experian, stuff like that, they all have these programs where you sign up and you can get information on how to track that personal credit. Everything that you know about personal credit, let me rephrase that. Most everything you know about personal credit does not transfer over to corporate credit. It is treated differently. It is treated differently, and understanding that is key for making sure that you maximize your corporate credit. So I think I beat that up enough, but I think the important part here is to understand there's a clear delineation between the two. A couple of the other myths that we'll talk about, and maybe some of the anecdotal information I'll share, will allude to that and more. But it's very important to understand that what you know about personal credit does not transfer to corporate credit. So don't get misled into thinking that that is the same. It is not. It's very different. And like I said, we'll go into more of that as we go.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Well, and I think, right, even if people are watching this, they may not even fully understand their personal credit, let alone the business credit, unless you have a finance degree or something like that. So I think that's a great place to start is, hey, they're different. And you're going to walk through a couple other important things, both today and on future workshops, which is awesome. So what's the second myth that you come across?
Another big one is that only large corporations can build corporate credit. That too is not accurate. Now, what you will find is the companies that typically have corporate credit and or use it, they have access to a lot of it because they usually have more astute or financially astute, I should say, people that running the organization. For instance, they have an actual CFO, and those CFOs, part of their role is to understand where to get access to capital. Now, access to capital can come in a number of different ways, but credit is certainly one of them that you leverage. And the larger you get, the more access you have to credit. Because if you have, for instance, you take your average small business, and let's say it does $250,000 a year, 20 grand a month, right? And let's say out of that 20,000, you have your product costs, and you have your service costs, and you have your payroll costs. And when it's all said and done, as an owner, you net $5,000 a month, right? Well, if you had a 20% reduction in sales in any given month, that 20,000, a 20% reduction would be a $4,000 reduction, which means it's 16,000. And if assuming for some of the adjusted expenses, the adjustable expenses, you're likely only going to net 3,500 or 4,000 that month, depending on how much of it is a variable and fixed costs. And the point is that movement in the business, that 20% reduction in business, transfers over to your profits and impacts your ability to pay bills personally, right? In a corporation, if they had a 20%, now let's say it's a larger corporation, they do $100 million a year, right? If they had a 20% reduction, that would be $80 million. And of that $100 million, they probably have a 20% net margin, which means, or I would say 15 is probably a reasonable number, or $15 million in net profits. But that 20% shift would be significant, and likely they could not continue to operate the business because it would put such a strain on cash flow. So most businesses I would say north of $5 or $10 million probably don't grow any further unless they have access to capital, meaning specifically the ability to leverage debt. And so almost all companies north of a certain dollar amount, and all of them have access to it, but just about any company north of a couple of $1 million in revenue is probably using debt in some way or another, whether that's a line of credit, company credit cards. I mean, David, you and I both work for companies that use company credit cards. That's a way to extend your expenses over in a period of time, and then recapture them somewhere 30 days later when you've got the revenue to offset it. So anyway, point is that a lot of people think only big corporations have corporate credit. That's not true. Any company can have corporate credit. You have to know how to establish it. And if I go into that just one step further, one of the most important things to understand as that relates to that, not all corporate credit is created equal. So the reason that most people might have a better handle on personal credit than they do on corporate credit is because in personal credit, most of the companies, the only way that they can get their money back is that they make a ding on your personal credit score. So they report to the credit bureaus on a regular basis. There's 3 major credit bureaus, and they report to them on a regular basis. On the corporation side, on corporate credit side, not all companies report to the bureaus, the Dun and Bradstreet, which is one of the most popular ones, report on a regular basis. So consequently, what happens is because they're not reporting, you may have credit from a company, like a vendor, for instance, that is not reporting your payment history, which means you're not getting any credit towards your corporate credit. And that's a big reason why people don't understand that, how the two are different. And as it relates to big versus small companies, think about it. Most small companies operate with other smaller companies, usually don't work with big companies. And consequently, those small to medium-sized companies seldom report to the different credit bureaus. So this is why you need to understand what kind of companies you'd be partnering with to establish corporate credit and why it's so important. We'll talk more about some of the value that you can have from it, but this is to help people understand that you don't have to be a big company. You just need to know what you're doing as it relates to building your corporate credit.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I hope I'm not jumping ahead here, but I think one of the things I heard you say that is worth, I think, paying attention to and drawing out a little bit more explicitly is you need to start this early, right? So if you're just starting a business or, you're your first year in or whatever, maybe you're a while in, but you've never really taken the time to do this, like do it now before you need it, right? And then give it time to build and then work with, somebody like you and Jay Gall to better understand the factors that go into it. But by the time you need it, it's probably too late. And so why wait? And I think a lot of people wait because they don't understand it, right? So I think you kind of touched on that, but I want to kind of draw that out a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. And the key is, and I've said this on the show before, if there's any chance that you're going to have or need a credit for your business, you want to get it before you need it. Because my experience has been, and if I had this conversation with 10 business owners, I will tell you at least half will completely concur with me, maybe more than half, maybe 7 or 8 out of 10 will say, yeah, don't wait until you need it because then you can't get it. That's almost always how it happens. So the truth of the matter is, to you, Dave, to answer your point or to drive your point home, David, is that you need to get it as soon as you can or begin establishing as soon as you can because you want it before you actually need it. And that will help you in that process, right? Because you want to do it when your numbers are in a good order and all the tools and resources that you need to have in place are in place, so that when you present a unified front and you get your banks and whoever else that you're trying to borrow money from, whether it's to buy equipment or to just get a line of credit or maybe have business credit cards so that you can spread out your expenses. Having employees is a great reason. If you have employees and vehicles, you should have company credit. You should have corporate credit cards because then the employees would use those credit cards for fuel and repairs and things like that. And you don't have to manage some kind of debit account or something like that, because I've seen people try and do that, and that's just crazy. So yeah, great point. Absolutely. Get it before you need it because you don't want to have to wait and try and get it when you do need it. That's usually doesn't work well for you.
Yeah, right. When you're behind on, getting supplies to be able to produce the products that you sell or make payroll and all that other
Yes.
stuff. So
Well,
yeah,
or like a great example is you just get a new client and they want to, their order is, 50% of what you normally buy in a month. So now all
yeah,
of a sudden you need access to that, capital that you have a huge order of like $30,000 and you normally buy $20,000 or $10,000 worth of product.
yeah,
Now you need to buy an extra $10 or $15,000 worth of product, and you don't have the availability to do that. So you need to be
yeah,
able to access credit to do it in the short term,
yeah, absolutely.
or risk losing the deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Well, great tip. What's number 3? About halfway through.
Yeah. So number 3, personal guarantees are always required. That is not accurate either. It is definitely likely the case early on in your business, and that was one of the things I was alluding to a minute ago as well. When you first start out, you may very well have to do personal guarantees for some of the credit that you take on. As a matter of fact, just about anybody who's ever bought a business or took an SBA loan to buy or expand or whatever in a business, probably signed a personal guarantee. I'm going to say like 90+%, if not all of them. I'm sure not all of them, but many of them, because the SBA, that's one of the requirements. So you get special lending solutions and things like that, but it's because you personally guarantee it. Point being, yes, many times a personal guarantee is required early on. However, once you establish corporate credit, remember, it's a separate entity. So once the entity has enough revenue and credit on its own, it can do the guarantee. No, you don't have to sign a personal guarantee. The company is signing a guarantee. Now, think of it this way. Do you think GMAC does personal guarantees on the loans that they borrow, the money they borrow? Do you think that any of the major corporations ever have to do personal guarantees for the money they borrow for their businesses? No, there's entire corporations. It's not Joe Schmo who's running the business, right? It's big corporations with board members and all that kind of stuff, and they don't all sign personal guarantees for those debts, right? So that's probably part of the reason why a lot of people think that only large major corporations can have credit. That's not accurate. It does require a certain amount of demonstrated success with being able to manage your business credit and all that kind of stuff, which is some of the stuff we'll talk about. But when you establish that corporate credit and you show your company's ability to pay back debt and everything like that, then you move into a situation where you no longer have to have a personal guarantee, and the corporation will absorb that guarantee at that point.
Yeah, no, and I think people that don't understand that or assume that that's the case, right? They're putting themselves in personal liability unnecessarily when, if they understood the concepts and the principles more fully, as you're describing them, right, they could avoid
Right.
a lot of that liability to their personal finances. So makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
and I think we've all heard horror stories of somebody who
Oh,
bought into
yeah,
a business, borrowed money for the business, and then ended up not only losing the business, but then worse yet, owing that debt long after shutting down the business, or potentially even losing a home because they put the home up as collateral for the loan,
yeah,
which is not uncommon in an SBA loan.
yeah,
So, that's it's a scary place to be if you're a business owner and the business tends to struggle. I mean, you
yeah,
think about it, you've heard me say these statistics before. If 74% of businesses don't make it 10 years, the odds are not in your favor. And if you take a 10-year loan from the SBA and 74% of businesses don't make it 10 years. Now, what would be interesting is if we actually look at businesses who took an SBA loan, how many of those on a percentage basis made it 10 years?
mhm,
I'll bet you it's a higher percentage. However, that aside, my point being is the odds aren't in your favor. So don't go rolling the dice more than you need to, right? Take
yeah,
advantage of the opportunities. I mean, they created corporate credit for a reason. The reason all of these legal avenues are available is because really smart, financially astute people understood this and they wanted to protect themselves. And the federal government makes these resources available to us so that we can, because they encourage us to go out and start business and build business, right? So these tools and resources are available to us. It's just that most of the common people don't know this and they don't know what to ask. So it's the age old story. If you don't know what you don't know, you're the one that's usually left held in the bag.
yeah. Is it too bold to say that if somebody's watching this and they're their first year in business, one of their strategic objectives should be establishing business credit so they can stop personally
Absolutely.
guaranteeing their finances?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That 100%. That is not too bold. I would highly recommend. It may not be the first thing you do. The first thing you want to do is get revenue coming in and all that fun stuff. But
Yes.
once you've begun to establish that you have an operating business is bringing in revenue, and you're beginning to see the growth opportunity, you should be trying to negotiate through this establishing corporate credit process, because the more that you have available to you, the more likely you are to take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. What's number 4?
So number 4, it takes too long to build corporate credit. That is also a misunderstanding. Again, I think it goes hand in hand with only the big corporations can have corporate credit. That also is not accurate. It will take you some time for certain. And realistically, David, you just used an analogy and you said, hey, would it be too bold to say if I should start in my first year? That's perfect. Now, the process that you go to will take between, I would say, absolutely in the short end, and this is if you're already established and have been in business for a while, and maybe by default already done some of these things that you would need to do, that you could get it done in like 9 months. But typically what we recommend is a year to 18 months. And you can see most of the benefit within the first 12 months. You will see extended benefits in the following year or two after that. But that's an important distinction, is it doesn't take that long. It does take some time though. So it's not like you're going to, month 2, you're going to start getting $100,000 worth of corporate credit. It is likely going to take the better part of a year to establish that kind of number. And there are certain things that lend itself to that, as far as if you're in a company, or if your company carries expenses in advance of your revenues, meaning you have to, like a trucking company, you pay for your diesel, you pay for the truck driver, you pay for repairs on the truck, all of that before you might likely get paid for the delivery. Then you absolutely need some kind of credit to operate on. And most people, again, do this on their personal credit. Whereas if they would take the time and establish their corporate credit, within probably 6 months or so, they'd have more than enough corporate credit to offset what they've been using the personal credit to do. So some companies lend itself better than others, but the point is it doesn't take that long. The time's going to pass anyway. And at the end of the day, you absolutely would benefit from having your company established with corporate credit, because now is in the later parts of your company, as you really scale, let's say you're buying more vehicles, or you could actually buy a building and use corporate credit as opposed to having to personally guarantee the building. So there's a number of different things that benefit from that will come later on down the road. For instance, Intel built a huge complex here in Chandler, Arizona. I heard it was $1 billion that they spent on the complex. I don't know how much it actually was, but they didn't, first of all, they didn't pay cash for the $1 billion. And they could have, likely, they're probably sitting on a ton of money. But if they're smart, they borrowed because they took advantage of the tax benefits and things like that you could do. Again, more advanced than this shows for today. But the point is, everybody's using that credit. What you need to do is determine how you can take advantage of it. And the first thing you need to do is establish it.
Yeah, and at the risk of a sales pitch here for your services and what JGalt does, would you say that working with a coach and somebody that deeply understands business credit can shorten that time frame?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're not established enough to have a CFO or a controller, or like an accountant who's actively involved in your business, then the next best solution would be somebody who's financially astute enough as a coach that could come in and help. A fractional CFO, which we have some of those on our team here at My Biz Coaches, are capable of giving you the insight. Not all of them, but many of them will be. And anybody who comes from My Biz Coaches would absolutely be able to support somebody through that process.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let's hit number 5.
So number 5, corporate credit is only for borrowing money. That is not accurate as well. Like I said earlier, there's a number of different ways that you can establish this. If I go back to my business with the trucking business, we had lines of credit for buying diesel. We had lines of credit for repairs, getting repairs, buying equipment for the trucks to repair the trucks, like tires and things like that. We had leasing agreements, right? You're going to need corporate credit. If you have corporate credit, I was able to lease more than half the vehicles, or lease or purchase, depending on what we chose to do. And I say vehicles, that we had trucks and trailers, but I was able to lease or purchase more than half of those vehicles on corporate credit. So in the beginning, I started with personal credit, had to personally guarantee those. Eventually, I was able to move to corporate credit with some personal guarantees. And then ultimately, I was able to move to entirely all corporate credit with no guarantee, no personal guarantee documents, which is the ideal place to be, because should something go south and not work out, you're not stuck holding the bag. And that's an important component. Again, most people do not have the financial understanding to grasp the value of that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. Well, you want to round us out and get us to number 6?
Yeah, so we're gonna. This is like a twofer here on this one, but it's paying
Like
bills on.
Love
Yeah,
that.
bonus. Yeah, exactly. So paying bills on time is enough to establish corporate credit. Again, corporate credit is not like personal credit, so it operates significantly different. One of the specific things that I help people understand is, okay, so paying the bills is important, yes, but in personal credit, we're often trained, charge something on your credit card and then immediately pay it off within the 30 days. Charge it, pay it off, charge it, pay it off, and that will help lift your FICO score. So, and that's accurate as it relates to personal credit. But as it relates to corporate credit, it does not quite have the same impact. Carrying a balance on your corporate business card is not necessarily going to pull your company score down. Not making a payment will definitely pull your company score down, but having a higher balance, as long as you're consistently paying, is not going to adversely affect your corporate score. So what that a lot of people think, well, I need to pay it right off. No, most companies actually carry a lot of credit debt, and there's a reason for that, because there's a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, tax benefits from that. So I can't give tax advice, and certainly, again, we can't go into that level of detail here, but there are reasons for that, and you want to make sure that you know and understand that. So make sure you get advice of a financial advisor or accountant, somebody, a CPA or somebody who can help you with that. But as it relates to business credit, understand corporate credit, understand that there's a lot of different things. There are a lot of things that are different as it relates to personal credit. And one of the most important ones is, just because you have a balance on your corporate account does not mean it's going to pull your score down. You do need to keep making the payments on time, and that won't change. But as long as your business can support that and continue to pay that debt, what you'll often find, if you're using your corporate credit correctly, right? You're not using it for frivolous stuff, but using it intelligently. You're actually using the credit to buy resources, tools, solutions, whatever, that are going to help you grow your business. So theoretically, if I borrow this money at, let's say, I don't know, 10 or 12% for a corporate rate right now, if I borrow money at 10 or 12% and allows me to put, for instance, a truck on the road, well, that truck would help me generate, if I'm going back to my trucking days, that truck would help me generate $22,000 to $25,000 a month in gross top line revenue. And it would allow me to net somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 a month, run efficiently. So I don't mind paying a few $100 in interest on that outstanding debt that I use to get my truck on the road and pay for everything that would take to get it out on the road. I wouldn't mind doing that and covering a few $100 in interest if I'm going to get let's say $8,000 on $8,000 cash influx back into the business. So again, if you're using your credit intelligently, there's a lot of advantage you have from that. And so you need to make sure that you understand the rules of business credit, which is a lot of what Jay Galt does to educate you and help you understand that.
Awesome. Well, I want to take just a second, Eric, and kind of bring it back to business coaches, right? I mean, that's kind of what we talk about here on the show, and also people, professionals that serve businesses. And so kind of, if you would, just make a quick connection for the audience between kind of business coaching and Jay Galt, and how those two things might work together if somebody's interested, maybe adding this as a component of the coaching that they provide to their clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the most important things and this is an ongoing conversation that we have with clients all the time, and it is the fact that you take your small business example, take that average business owner who's going, let's say $30,000 a month in revenue. They got maybe 2 trucks out on the road, and let's say it's a pest control company and they don't have a whole lot. They got some chemicals they have to buy and gas, and get the leases on the trucks or whatever. Certainly they're covering the payroll, whatnot. Maybe it's 3 trucks at that point. But the point is that with that size of business, the problem they're going to have, like let's say there are 3 and they want to jump to 5 trucks. They're probably getting by and in a comfortable spot at that 30,000 with 3 trucks. But to go to 3 from 3 to 5, they have to make a leap. And that leap requires them to either, as an individual, as the business owner, take less money so that they can put more money back into the business, or they have to have some kind of windfall of some sort to come into the business so they have the extra capital to buy those trucks, put the payroll on, hire the employees, bring the payroll on, get those routes up and running, and then sell the accounts to fill the expense. Right? That's usually it's a chicken or egg, right? Which comes first, right? Do you get the new clients? Well, you can't do more clients if you're already maxed out on the trucks. And if the trucks are already maxed out, you're probably financially comfortable. However, you probably don't have enough excess or if you do have enough excess, it would take many, many months to save up to get the resources that you need to put that nest egg aside and say, okay, I'm comfortable opening the next series of trucks. Most companies most business models are not so affluent that they could easily support that extra debt for any extended period of time. So where they end up going is they go to debt. Let me borrow money to buy the trucks, because it's not just buying the trucks, it's not just financing the trucks. You also have down payments on that. Well, if it's a $40,000 truck and you finance $35,000, you got to put $5,000 down. You're buying 2 trucks. That's $10,000 cash out of pocket, right? So it's $10,000 cash for that. Plus you got to front load the payroll, which could be 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on your training requirements. You have to buy additional chemicals. You have to buy, right? And so now all of a sudden you can see where you need an extra $30,000 or $40,000 to comfortably get those trucks and those employees out into the business deployed so you can absorb the new business you're bringing in. And that is hard for a business owner that's already at that first spot, excuse me, to be able to make that leap mentally. And they often need a coach to kind of guide them through what that should look like. So step 1, what should we do? Step 2, what should we do? Step 3, what should we do? And have somebody kind of hold them accountable walking through that process so they don't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, Eric. And as you're talking, I mean, I love the leap analogy, right? And they don't come very often, and when they do, you need to definitely capitalize on it. But I think what resonated with me, or what I was thinking about as you were saying that, is if you don't have the ability to leverage, right, a loan or some other, finance mechanism, then what a lot of people are left with is they have to give up equity in their business and bring on an investor or something like that. And that, you think interest on a business loan is high. Well, think about all the equity you're giving up and the value of that over time that you're losing. So taking the steps, building the credit, working with a coach, right? Understanding the sequence and the things that need to happen so you're ready when that leap comes, both strategically, operationally, but also financially, super important. So I appreciate how you tied all that together.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I'll give a great analogy because you referenced it. If you were to take on an equity partner, right? Let's say you had to pay 12% interest, which is probably where the market's at right now for corporate credit, depending on the debt and all that kind of stuff. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's just say it was 15%. That seems high, right? Well, 15% for, let's say, $50,000. I don't know, what's that, $7,500 in interest, maybe over an extended period of time, maybe closer to $15,000, depending on how long you financed it over, right? But that is a drop in the bucket to 15% of an equity position of a partner you have to bring on to get the same $50,000 for 15% in perpetuity, meaning forever. Right? So even at 15% for a $50,000 loan to help your business make the leap from 3 to 5 trucks, that's nothing compared to having to bring on a partner to drop 50,000 into the business and take on a 15% stake forever. And it's, sometimes I think some people miss the math on that. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with bringing in a partner and somebody making an investment in your business. I'm just saying, make sure you're weighing out the differences, because there's a significant difference between 15% forever and 15% for a 5-year term loan or something like that.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it solely for the financial benefit, right? I mean, there's other advantages of, a network or
Absolutely.
experience, of course, which, that may be a factor. But yeah, if it's just so you can buy those 3 other trucks, I think the loan's the better way to go. So I think that's something people need to consider for sure.
Agreed.
Cool. Well, as we wrap up here, Eric, any other thoughts on that? And if not, maybe we can just talk about some next steps.
Yeah, no, nothing really specific. Like I said, I think the biggest thing is, and we've only scratched the surface, David, on some of these myths. There's a number of other myths that we could probably go into. We recently did a workshop. We do our free workshops on Tuesday at 10 a.m. And we did a free workshop. We covered 5 myths that are very common myths. Many of which we just covered right now. But the point is that there's tons of misunderstandings, miscommunications, even misinterpretations. Like somebody may have gotten information from a banker, somebody at your normal commercial bank, with Chase, Wells Fargo, whatever, doesn't matter, that they explained to them about getting a business credit card. Well, getting that business credit card, what it takes to get that, and what your company may have to demonstrate to be able to get that $5,000 or $10,000 line of credit or credit card, right? It seems they'll get. My point is, the owner could get turned down for that $15,000 or $10,000 credit card or whatever. And the reality is, if they knew the stuff that we can help them understand, and they could do that in advance, it would dramatically enhance the chances of them getting approved for that credit card.
Yeah. Well,
and in the beginning, when you're started, like you said, in year one, a $10,000 credit card could be substantial for your average small service-based business.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of business owners that they're frustrated, not just because they're getting turned down, right? And they need the financing, but they don't understand why they're being turned down and what they need to do to fix it. And so they get stuck in this cycle of despair with everything else that's going on, right? And, it makes sense why a lot of businesses don't make it when they don't understand exactly what the obstacles are and how to overcome them. And that's really where, a coach like yourself can come in and help.
Right. Well, and I'll use a success story that we had at our previous employer. The owners of that company, we were able to grow 140 stores, retail locations, in over a 12-year span of time, just short of 12 years, I think it was. We had 140 stores. The owners never signed a personal guarantee for any of those leases.
Pretty cool.
Which is unheard of. Right now, we had some added advantage because when we started the company was right smack dab in the real estate debacle of 2006, 7, 8, 9, right? And it was, getting for commercial land or real estate owners to lease their space was really hard because there was a lot of shortage of businesses out there. And so during that time, we were able to leverage that. And then later on, when the financials were good for the company, we could use the corporate credit at that point, and we didn't need to sign those personal guarantees. So it's a perfect example. And what I would explain anybody who doesn't completely get that picture, if you've ever had a lease obligation, a commercial lease obligation, and could not pay and had default and pulled out of the space early and did not fulfill on the obligation of the lease agreement, they'll come after you for the entire balance of what's outstanding on that lease. And I know from personal experience. So I share that to give you, it's like, say, well, okay, I understand that, you're shutting down 2 years early because the company's not struggling, but you still owe $4,000 a month for the next 24 months. That's $100,000, right? That's, and that's not going away. They will come after you. You may have to settle at some point, but that's going to take a huge hit on your personal credit, or it's going to take you a long time to pay it off while it takes a hit on your credit. So if you can use corporate credit to establish this, build this, scale this business, whatever business you have, and be able to leverage the corporate veil and be able to protect yourself personally from your personal finances, separate them from your business, you'd be a fool not to.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Well, I think just for folks that are maybe watching or listening and they're thinking, hey, I'd love to learn more about business credit. I'd love to learn more about, this partnership with Eric and Jay Galt and kind of what that looks like. Or they're considering, hey, I'd love to help businesses navigate some of those challenges as a coach. But just encourage you to scan the QR code or head to mybizcoaches.co/coach. Just a free call. It's a great conversation. However, you want to navigate that, what you want to learn more about. Eric or one of his coaches would love to chat with you about that. And we've got a lot more to come on not only business credit, but a lot of other things to help you grow your coaching business or add coaching to your existing professional services. So, Eric, as always, man, it's been great hanging out with you, and thanks for the insights today.
Appreciate it. Thanks, David.